and welcome to the Young Film Academy podcast, the essential podcast for teenagers looking to find their way into the creative industries. I'm James Walker. I'm here live at the Media Production and Technology Show at London Olympia. There's a lot going on. I'm delighted to be joined by some of our acting students at Young Film Academy, and we are here to discuss their acting experiences on screen and talk a little bit about the Project Paradiso experience that we touched on in the last episode with the filmmakers, and this time we'll be looking at things from a screen acting angle. So I'm absolutely delighted to have with me today Ashton Hunt and Calypso Lewis. Thanks for joining, guys.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. So first of all, we're here at London Olympia. There's a lot of shiny stuff out there. What have you noticed what are your impressions as you've wandered around, Ashton?
Yes, well, so I'm more of the acting side. So when I've been going around, I haven't quite understood a lot of it because I'm more of being on the screen rather than behind the screen. But I think to me, what I found the most cool was there was a motion capture area, and I was watching this actress, and she was showing how she was moving and how it was tracking her, and how it went straight from like the raw materials into the final production, and how incredibly cool that was.
And actually, her suit, if you noticed, it didn't have the big balls. As it
Yes,
it was almost completely hidden. It looked like like she was wearing a wetsuit or something, didn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, amazing. Calypso, anything's taken your interest as you've wandered around?
Yeah, like Ashton, I don't understand any of this stuff. It's a lot of words that don't make sense to me. One thing, okay, this actually isn't that cool, but I saw a booth about risk assessment, and it just seems like a really fun job coming up with all the terrible things that could happen.
Oh, don't. From a Young Film Academy perspective, we spend a lot of time doing that. But yes, you're absolutely right. And I think as well, from an acting perspective, you know, seeing just the sheer volume of technology required to do this at scale, right, is to bring your performances, but everything else that has to happen, I suppose, is. We'll jump forward a bit, but genuinely, did you feel from your experiences on Project Paradiso that the sort of the tech side was something that you're unfamiliar with working as an actor?
Oh, 100%. I mean, when we were there and when we were at Paradiso, I spent a lot of the time when I wasn't on screen, when I wasn't being filmed, I spent a lot of time with the camera crew and the lighting crew and watching them do all their stuff that they had to do. And there was so much that you just don't quite consider when you're an actor straight away, especially in your early stages. So it was really interesting to watch them work and see all the stuff that they knew and the stuff that they had to understand.
Yeah. Well, let's contextualize this for some of the listeners and the viewers. So Young Film Academy, we help 15,000 young people every year learn practical filmmaking production skills. And out of all of the various things we do, we select each year, which we've now done for the last 2 years, our most promising 24 students, and we divide them into what we call crews. So we have a writing crew and an acting crew and a producing crew and a technical camera and sound crew. And this Project Paradiso was intended to give them an opportunity to work together and to travel to Sicily in February and to make a film with everyone aged about 16 to 19, I think is about the age range, and to make a film with really high-end equipment that's industry standard on a fairly big scale film set that is kind of hybrid between education and the film industry, and to, as they travel to Sicily for a week in February, shoot that movie and see if it can have a life on the festival circuit. And in fact, last year's film, Lemons, which was made by the first Paradiso group, has gone on to play in almost 30 international festivals, has won almost 10 student film awards, it's done really well. And so this is the context into which you were selected for Project Paradiso, both of you, in the acting crew. So let's start there. In fact, let's go back before then. In just acting in general, maybe, in Calypso, you can start us off. Like, how much acting have you done prior to coming to Young Film Academy, and in what kind of context was that?
It's been a lot of theatre, mostly. I only started doing film because of Young Film Academy, because I have always done like school plays and things. I was the only year 7 with a line in Lord of the Flies.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I've done a lot of theatre, and then a while ago I really wanted to go to an acting summer camp, and my mum just found YFA, and then that kind of got me into film acting. So I really like both sides of it, I think. But yeah, I've always done it.
So it was mainly theatre, and then you transferred, you did your first films at the Young Film Academy residential Filmmaking and Screen Acting Summer Camp, which we run each year for young people aged 12 to 17. And you had your first experience. And how did you find that first experience of screen acting versus theatre?
I think for the first time, I don't know, it was it's a lot sort of slower, I think, is kind of the main thing. Like, it's a lot, you're not sort of pumped up and like going out and doing the whole thing and then being done. Often also because we were making very short films, you have sort of 3 lines throughout the entire film, but you do them a million times. So it's sort of, I don't know, the whole thing is very differently paced.
And almost quite fractured, I suppose, from an actor's perspective, I should imagine. Whereas on stage, as you see, get yourself ready, you go out, there's an adrenaline rush, and then you're into it, you do the whole thing. Whereas you're having to repeat, go backwards, forwards, all of that, all that stuff. Okay, great. And Ashton, what was your experience before coming to Young Film Academy?
I'll be honest, I didn't actually do too much. I mean, I did a few things at primary school, but I was actually more down the music route for most of my life. And then it was a very last-minute decision that even though I love music, I was much more passionate about acting, and I knew that was what I wanted to do. So I did a few like musical theatre courses over the summer beforehand, before I did Young Film Academy. But yeah, my first experience with camera work especially was with Young Film Academy. And I did a few things when I was young with like iMovie, I think, as a lot of people who go into this industry did. I used to film lots of short films on my iPad by myself, and that's kind of where I found the passion for it. And yeah, when I started, my first year was in 2022, and it was just such a unique experience, and it was everything I thought it was going to be. I thought that I was going to love it, and I did. So
at the summer camp, Young Film Academy Summer Camp.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And when you first made those films, at home, were you doing it with friends and family? Kind of, were you raping your mum and dad to be in the movie with you? How was that?
It was mostly by myself. I liked doing a lot of stop motion animation, especially as I used to film like lots of YouTube videos as well, and then my Lego cities and that sort of stuff. And I used to make my own skits as well, which I do a lot with my sister actually. She hasn't gone down that industry, but I used to always rope her into doing things for me.
That's really cool. Yeah. Well, I think everyone starts with those things at home, just doing little bits and then sort of progressing. And that's at Young Film Academy. Hopefully we can channel some of that sort of passion into something a bit more focused towards the industry. So you both had some theatre experience. You come to the Young Film Academy Summer Camp. You have your first taste of acting on screen. And as a result of that, have you been back a few times to the summer camp, both of you?
Yes.
You have, yeah. So actually, almost probably the second time, was it at all different? How was it for you, Calypso, sort of returning and doing it again?
The second time, I was much more used to it, obviously, like the sort of the pace of it. And the second time as well, I did a really different film to the film that I did the first time, because the first time I did a sort of silly rom-com, and then the second time I played like a corpse. So it was an interesting thing, but it was really, I don't know, it's quite easy to get used to once you sort of get into the swing of it. Also just YFA is such a fun thing, so I love going back every year, and I love getting to do a completely different thing every time.
Yeah, great. And so you both then at some point received an email saying that you'd been selected for Project Paradiso. Ashton, do you remember how you felt when you got that?
Yes, well, I have to say I was very shocked. So my first year was in 2022, summer of 2022, and I remember you were doing your speech at the beginning of the whole experience, and you were talking about Paradiso, and I was thinking, that's so out of reach. Like, out of all the people that they have doing this, a part of this company, why would they pick me? And so after doing the first year, I completely fell in love with this whole industry. And so when I went back the second year, it's like, I'm going to do everything I can to get on their radar. And it worked. So I was elated.
Do you remember where you were when you got it?
I think I was in the car. I think I was getting my car washed. So it was a surreal moment, really. So yeah, mind-blowing.
That's great. And what about you, Calypso?
I remember it really well, because I was upstairs doing homework and my mum called me and she was like, Calypso, I've got an email about some Sicily thing. And I was like, what? And I sprinted downstairs. I was so excited. But originally I was on production crew, and then I think someone dropped out, so they moved me over to acting. But I was like excited to do anything. It was so cool.
That's so great. And so you got selected, and then the fundraising element, which is how the project is funded. So through a charity partner, the funds were then raised by a huge group of community. I think there was more than 500 donations to that campaign. How did you guys feel about sort of putting the word out, and how did you try to help that fundraising campaign and get the project off the ground?
Well, I did several things. First of all, was a lot of social media involved. I was trying to just reach as many people. Also, I got a list of businesses that are local businesses, and reached out to them and said, would you be interested in supporting this? And I also did a lot of fundraising concerts. As I said before, I do a lot of music, so I thought the best way to raise the money to go and do this was to do what I'm good at.
That's so good. Tell us about that. So you were performing and charging people entry, and that was going towards the fundraiser? Or?
So it was a less commission. So I would go to places and saying, I'm raising money to do this project. Would you mind taking me for an hour slot and charge me this much? And then I also put out a donations bucket. And I actually got quite a lot in cash donations as well, which I was really surprised to see.
Was it like busking?
So I went to local venues like pubs and things, and I was putting on small performances, about maybe an hour and a half of 45-minute slots, and I raised quite a lot. So it was quite nice. But then the rest of it, I had to reach out to relatives who were also
friends, fools, and family.
Yes, who were willing to chip in.
But that is brilliant, because I think the lesson is, in the early days, you've got to do. I remember to raise money for an early film that I did. I canoed the Thames from source, because you've got to do something you can't necessarily, you can say, please could you just support me, but it's quite nice when you show willing to do something out of the ordinary to help. So I did that, and people would sort of donate for that, which I then used to try to make the film. So yeah, that's brilliant. And what about you, Calypso?
I didn't do that. That sounds so cool. Mine was a lot of family and friends. Also, my dad, I wanted to get a job to try and do it, but we only had a month to fundraise. So my dad gave me a portion, and then I got a job and just sort of slowly paid him back, which I've done now. So
well done. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And overall, as I say, about 500 people contributed to that fundraiser, and the project got greenlit. So like a movie, we were into the production stage, and then the writing crew got working, the writer's room, and they came up with the idea for the film, which is called Strings, and is yet to be premiered. It premieres in about 6 weeks' time. So I remember when you, I suppose let's talk about as actors, when you first read the script that those other students had created, what was your first reaction to the script? I
thought it was so cool that we were doing a horror movie, but I also thought it's going to be quite hard, because a horror movie is a very difficult thing to do. But yeah, I was just really excited, especially with how different it was to last year.
Cool. And you, Ash?
My initial thoughts was it was very ambitious, because obviously there's a lot of effects that had to be used with makeup and everything, and I was just thinking, how on earth are they going to do that? And after seeing it, I was like, wow, we really managed to pull this off. So yeah, and as Calypso said, to do a horror was very different to what they did last year with Lemons. That took me by surprise as well.
And did you, without giving too much away about Strings, and I hope the listeners will eventually be able to look out Strings when it sort of drops, as it were, but there are themes specifically to do with kind of, teenagers within that, built in by the writers into that. To what extent did those themes kind of land with you?
Yes, well, I feel like with every actor, they look for a way to resonate with their character and a connection, because at the end of the day, you want it to be something that the audience can connect with. So for me, I felt it was quite useful having them be of a similar age and time in their life, that it was easier to portray their journeys. But it was there was a lot of character work involved, I would say. Yeah,
I really enjoyed the character work, because, initially I saw it very surface level, but when we started talking to the directors and the writers, and I learned a lot about my character and her. I don't know, there was a particular aspect of, she used to be very close friends with one of the characters, and then they sort of grew apart. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people can relate to, and I felt it's quite a nice thing to portray, because it's sort of, I don't know, everyone knows it, and it's quite sad, but it happens to everybody, of not being as close with someone but desperately trying to be. So.
Yeah, interesting. I really feel that, actually, looking at the movie now, I could feel how a teenage audience will really relate to this movie, actually. Yeah. I'm quite excited to see what they make of it, because it's also pretty weird, as we come on to in many ways, and as you say, very ambitious. So you arrive in Sicily. We talked about in the last episode a little bit about that location, that incredible place. First of all, did you know the other actors in the crew, and did you just meet at the airport, or how did you get introduced to the others in the cast?
Calypso, you've done this for 3 years in a row now. So I met Calypso once or twice in the course, which we didn't actually speak much, and I didn't speak to Coco either, who was the other actress on the course. And so we kind of got to know each other over Sicily, and it was only a week, but I feel like I know them so well now. And in that 1 week, we just became so close, which I thought was
So
really
you
cool.
met Coco basically more or less at the airport?
Yes, pretty much. I had seen her around on at the summer camp, but hadn't really spoken to her before.
And how much, because I think a lot of young actors and actors will be listening to this and kind of going, is there a rehearsal period? Like, how does this work? So was there any rehearsal, Calypso?
We did a read through on Zoom and we did a lot of character work. And then sometimes before we do a scene, actually, I remember on the first day, because the first day we were there, we didn't really have anything to do because everyone was setting up and figuring out the location. So we went off to just like a random area and like acted out the film together. So yeah, we kind of did our own rehearsals, and we'd always do a run through before we started a shot. But there wasn't that much rehearsal, was there?
Well, we also we did a lot of read-throughs online over Zoom and getting to know the different teams that will be working, because there's for something that's so, I mean, in comparison to like a Hollywood film, for something so small, there's lots of people involved and lots of stuff involved, and you don't really think about that stuff straight away. But the more you dive into it, the more you realise. And there's lots of independent rehearsal as well. I mean, something that I did a lot was trying to understand people. Not to sound in a weird way, but I did a lot of people watching to understand people's characters. I mean, to act, you need to understand behaviour. And I think that's really important. So I did a lot of that.
And just tell us a little bit, without giving too much of the story away, maybe a little bit about the character you portray in the movie.
So I'm the only... Alex is the character that I play, and he is the only guy in the show. So I feel like that has some connotations to it, and I definitely drive a wedge between the other two characters. And so I'm definitely... I have a big effect on how the other characters act when they were together and when they're apart. So that was something that I really want to focus on.
I think there's a moment in the behind the scenes that I've seen briefly where you go, yeah, my character Alex, he's actually quite annoying.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you feel? Because you're kind of an anti-character, aren't you? You're kind of an anti-hero to some degree.
Yes. I would say that Alex does definitely get in the way, and I think he causes a lot of the problems. But then again, I spent a lot of time thinking about why he acts how he acts and what's motivating it. Character motivation is such a big thing when you're doing this sort of things. And especially the difference between screen and theatre is that the screen the camera picks up so much more. So you have to be so much more in depth. You have to really feel what the character's feeling. So having that idea of being the proverbial antagonist, you have to really consider all those factors.
Yeah, so interesting. We'll come talk a little bit about acting for camera in a second in more detail. But what were your relationships when you arrived on set, Calypso, and you sort of looked around? Did you have it? Because obviously, is that the biggest set you've worked on? And what was that as an actress working in that environment? How did that feel?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely the biggest set I've worked on. It was, I don't know, it was just really cool. I remember on the first day I went to do a makeup test for am I allowed to talk about that? Yeah, for the special effects. And just like she had this huge table of so many things, and then you went into the next room and it was the props room and they had just stuff everywhere. And it's like, it's such a big scale, even though it was a small film, it was still, like you said, so many people and so much stuff going on. And also some of my acting bits, they were quite like, because there were a lot of people there and I was doing quite a lot of like crazy stuff, it was quite intimidating. But there was actually one moment where I was doing a really big scene and I was like in a room and all the monitors and everyone else were in another room. So actually that was quite nice because I got to really get into it. But yeah, it's big.
Yeah, and quite intimidating, I suppose, actually, as you say, that first, as an actor working in that environment, and probably because also lots of people are looking at you. You know, you might have 20 people in the room, you know, there's 30 people there at any one time. Was that part of that experience, just the amount of eyeballs on you at any one time?
Yeah, I remember the first shot we did because we were actors, we kind of just had to be on standby. So when everyone else was like getting stuff ready and then they were like, okay, we're ready. And we were like, okay. And then they just sort of said action. And I was like terrified, but I just did it. And then once we'd done the first shot, it was fine. But just that being so many people being there and like so much going on, it was scary, but it was really cool.
Yeah. And what was your, Ashton, some of the sort of technical bits? Obviously, for those maybe listeners who haven't done a lot of screen acting work, maybe young people who are listening have done some theatre before, what would you pick out as some of the main differences when you're working on a set like that you had to consider in a sort of technical way as opposed to the character work?
So I'd say the biggest thing is the micro expressions. Because when you're in theatre, people can't see all the little things that your face is doing, whereas the camera is going to pick up every single thing you do, and it's going to catch what's in your eyes, and you don't see that on the stage, which I think is really important. And other things to do with like the microphones. So they had lots of sound and various different things with booms and ones that you wear underneath your shirts, and understanding all that was really important as well. I mean, especially something that I found, it felt very exposing, especially because, not to give away too much, but I had to put on a voice one part, and that felt I felt very open and very exposed, and so that was something that I had to get over at the start.
In what way do you mean exposed?
Exposed, well, I just had to kind of draw a line between me and my character, with the fact that I was putting on, well, I say a silly voice. I was putting on a different voice that was unique and could come off as quite silly. And so it felt not embarrassing, but you have to understand that that's not you, and to dedicate yourself to the character as much as you can, you kind of have to make that separation.
And lose your own self-consciousness.
Yes, self-consciousness was such a big thing that played into it. And I feel like the more I did it, the more comfortable I got. And I realised that everyone else is there to do the same thing. We're all here to put on the best thing we can, and no one's judging anyone. And so it was a really nice atmosphere, actually, once you get past that. I mean, it's quite daunting at the start, but then once you get past that, it's just really actually quite relaxing.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really interesting point that we should just maybe expand on a touch, because it's a trope, isn't it, that for young people, especially now with social media and everything else that's there, the way the world sees you is often a big focus for young people. Not necessarily all for good, and unfortunately, but it is a thing. And so I suppose for you guys, you're aware that you're now on film. Film is forever. There's this great expression: pain is temporary, film is forever. So on those long night sets, but you're putting this down for the rest of your life. This film will always exist, and it will be watched by all your peers and all your community, all your groups, and all that stuff. And I suppose, therefore, having to just lose and forget that is that part of it for you? Yes, well, it was a really big element for me, because, as you say, especially with our generation, your image is really important. I mean, with social media and everyone's judging everyone, and everyone's looking at everyone saying, oh, I want that. And so to separate yourself from that and just think, okay, I'm going to deliver the best performance I can, create the best character I can. And actually, I think at the end of the day, it's the best performances that people don't question, which is something that I tried to remind myself a lot of. And eventually I got quite comfortable with it, and I have to say I'm quite happy with it now. So.
Yeah, well, I think one thing my mum always used to say when you're doing theatre is that you actually look a lot worse if you're self-conscious. If you're sort of trying to hide it and be a bit embarrassed, you just don't fit in with everyone else. So like you said, everyone's here to do the same thing and make a good film. And once we started, I had to do a big scream at one point, which felt pretty awkward, because even though I was in another room doing it, I knew there was a room full of just teenagers watching me do a massive, silly scream. But once I started doing it, it was, I don't know, it was fun. And also it just kind of felt like playing. You just get into it and you just you go with the role, Well, it was intense. You have a scene at the end of the movie that's really intense, and it's just you, actually. There's no one else in that sequence. And so, yeah, maybe was that the final day of filming? Is that? No, we did it sort of in the middle, didn't we?
Yeah, we had to jump around, but that was mainly for lighting, because I think the biggest thing actually with you don't realize how important daylight is. And how natural light affects things, and when you film things at different times of the day, even if it's inside, different reflections will be coming through different parts of the room, and it's just stuff that you really have to spend a lot of focused time on. So that made us juggle our schedule around quite a bit.
Yeah, there's one really cool bit, like you were saying about lighting, where you won't be able to see it in the film, but there's a shaft of light coming in, and it's completely not the sun at all. It's just the light, but it looks and there's another bit actually at the end where I go outside, and it was actually nighttime, like the sun had set by then, but they made it look like it was daytime outside. It was really, really cool.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know, just what you said about timing. Like, do you remember when we had to go into like 10 p.m.?
Yes.
That was when I was doing my big intense scene. We had to stay after dinner. We had to go back and stay for ages, which was actually really fun. It was quite sort of exhilarating when you get into it.
Well, we talked with the filmmakers a little bit about this resilience and the long days. There are long days, and also, I remember, back in the day when I did some acting, that it was exhausting. Actually, I found it's just quite tiring. And people think it's an easy thing. They're like, well, they're just standing up saying a few lines. So maybe talk a little bit about that, just the fatigue element, and I suppose the resilience required at a young age.
Something that I would say that I think people don't quite think about when it comes to this sort of thing, especially for acting for screen, is the more tiring part is not actually the acting. It is, as you say, the waiting around, because you're sat and you'll be saying, okay, I'm doing this scene later on in the day, and it'll go and go and go, and it'll get to the point where you're not filming today. Okay, sorry. But you've been sat there, you've got ready, you've got into your costume, you've done makeup, you've done all of that, and you've been ready and ready to go to get into that mental state of your character. And then at the end of the day, you don't do anything. And that is very exhausting, because you have to be so professional, because obviously everyone else is being really professional and trying to get all the stuff that they need as quickly as possible. And so yeah, being that talent and sitting around waiting, I would say, is probably the hardest part, actually.
And then the scene gets cut from the movie anyway.
Yeah.
Then you get on, and then you watch the final movie, like, what happened to that?
Yeah.
Which is all part of the process, I assume. And for you?
I think it's a lot easier to be like resilient when everyone around you is being, because when you're on set and like you have to do a scene again and it feels like the millionth time, but it's the millionth time for everyone else, and everyone's just sort of focused and doing it. And also I found that I did get tired, but I got tired, like you said, between takes. But when we were filming, I think I could have done it again and again forever, because you just sort of got quite into it and like energetic. Yeah.
How is that repeat take thing? Because again, from a theatre acting background, that's not something people would be familiar with. But if you're having to do, an intense sequence and you're having to be asked to do it again and again and again, how did you find that?
I found it okay. I think you do feel your energy drop. Like, even if you're the first one, well, sometimes it drops and then suddenly it comes back and then you get a really good one. But I had to try and not talk to people in between, because otherwise I'd like get really tired and out of it, and I had to sort of stay really focused, because I need the energy to match up with every time.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because you hear this a lot about sort of actors on sets and the way they behave when the camera's not rolling, and often it is a little bit odd from a sort of crew perspective. Yeah. But maybe is that because you're trying to sort of stay in the zone, stay focused?
Yeah, I think it was when you're doing a lighter scene, it's like fun to go and chat to people in between. But because that was quite a big one where I was like panicking and running around and screaming and crying and whatever, it was, I don't know, if I was talking to someone and then 2 seconds later they said action, I'd be like, well, so I had to sort of ignore the people around me and like focus on what I was doing and what I was meant to be feeling, because otherwise I'd like lose it, not lose it, like go crazy, like lose the emotion.
And would you guys kind of support each other between takes and stuff as an acting kind of, as fellow actors? Is that the vibe?
Oh, 100%. I feel like we were very supportive, and we were there for each other. When we would film a scene, we'd go up to them and say, that was really good. And sometimes I think we give each other notes as well and say, if you do that as well, that might look good. And that, I think that sort of community was really nice, especially because we all knew the pressures, because we were all doing it and we're doing different things. And so we understood that it was, yes, give advice and give support, but at the same time remember that they need to keep hold of their character. And so sometimes you also have to give them space, which I think was important. And it was important to understand when they wanted the space and when they didn't, because sometimes people wanted to speak between takes to help them, bring them back up, but sometimes people didn't, and you had to identify what sort of state people were in and respect it.
So it's emotional intelligence, actually,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes,
it's quite a lot of what an actor's doing, both in the preparation for the role, but also on sets, and that human engagement and knowing what to say or when not to say to people. And I think that comes with experience to some degree. Talking of which, Calypso, we were working with student directors. On this project there were 3 young directors. They're all aged sort of 17, 18, 19, 8 years old. So they haven't got tons of experience. You guys are early in this journey as well. How did you feel that relationship was? What were some of the challenges, some of the positives of that relationship working with those directors?
I thought they were all really good, and it's so nice to have a director to sort of, I don't know, be an observer. I mean, like, to tell you exactly what they need from you, and then it kind of takes the pressure off you a bit. And they were just so helpful, like, between takes. One of my favorite directions I got was when I was doing a vomiting scene, and then Ava came up to me and was like, "Can you do it grosser?" And I was like, "Okay." And I actually found that really fun. But I don't know, I think it's really cool. And the fact that they're our age, I think, means that they kind of have an understanding, and it didn't really feel like they were sort of bossing us about. It felt like we were working together. So it was really nice.
I would say that they were very professional, and despite us like hanging out after filming, like we had very long days, and afterwards we spent a lot of time together. When it came down to getting the shot and getting it all done, there was a whole switch in dynamic in a good way. Of course, it felt very raw, and it was helpful. It was very nice to have that rather than people messing around, and everyone was there to take it seriously. And I really liked that.
But specifically, because directors have got a tough job, is that because they're trying to communicate to you how best to manipulate the performance to get the best for the overall film. And sometimes I suppose you as an actor aren't necessarily aware of all of the bigger picture things. You know, you're very focused on your roles, I should imagine. And so almost the style of communication, you know, it's famously directors have got different styles. How did you feel? Did each of the directors have a different style of communication? And what did you feel? What did you learn, I suppose, about that relationship?
I think some were more specific than others. I don't know if you found that. Like, sometimes one would tell you exactly, like, do this, and then another one would just tell you, can you convey this a bit more? And you kind of have to figure out yourself. But it was quite nice having those different things, because it meant when I wanted to have more control over what I was doing, I could. And then when they sort of knew exactly what they wanted me to do, I could also do that.
Yeah, great.
Yes, it was nice that they had a really clear vision, and they did give us, obviously, they gave us lots of room to do our own thing, but at the same time, they knew when to jot in, and as you said, some of them were very direct, and they knew what they wanted, and other people were like, I want you to feel this, and by feeling that, you can portray something much more real and truthful, which I think was really interesting and really useful. And we also had lots of the staff there as well, from the YFA staff, that were helping out with them and saying, okay, yes, that's good, but also consider this. And that was really useful because they've also had a lot more experience, and they were both giving us directions and the directors directions. So we, it felt like we had some sort of support to fall back on, which was nice, because obviously it was something that we're quite new to. And so it was nice to have that experienced hand to help us through.
And so, yeah, I mean, when I came on set and I was on day 3 or 4, and it was a very supportive environment. And I know that you guys were having a lot of fun, sort of, you know, when you weren't filming, although there were long days as well. And that is one of the things, you know, as young people, we're looking at developing other projects, more news and on. But it's like getting you guys just to deal with, you know, life in the film industry can be quite brutal like that. You know, it's very early mornings, especially if you're in makeup, which is what you had. So can you just move a tiny bit close to your mic, closer? So in makeup, closer, let's just talk about that, because you had this experience of this sort of prosthetics makeup, and it took time. And how long might you be sitting in the chair for?
I think she said 4 hours, but it didn't feel like 4 hours because I was quite relaxed. But yeah, it was a long time.
4 hours in the chair. That's before you. So that's an amazing. And I mean, just how was that? I mean, is that meditative? Is that boring? Is that?
It is quite meditative, because I don't know. I quite like daydreaming anyway, just thinking about things. But also just watching her do it was so cool. I couldn't see when she was doing it on my face, but there were parts when she did stuff on my hands, and that was just really. I was just like mesmerized because she was so good at what she did, and it was so cool seeing all her techniques. And she told me a bit about it as well. Also, sitting in the chair when everyone sets up, it's quite nice, like, you're removed from what's going on. So everyone's rushing through and grabbing props. And I could just, like, sit calmly and wait for when I needed to be down. So.
Well, makeup artists often sort of act like therapists to some extent, don't they, on set? Because you guys as actors spend so much time in those chairs, especially on bigger productions. And I think that bond becomes quite a special bond. Yeah, you didn't have so much sort of prosthetics makeup, but
no, not necessarily. But another thing which our makeup artist Amarita was very on board with was the continuity, because that was a big thing when it came to screen. So she was always looking, oh, your shirt was not tucked in that take, so you need to make sure that's not. Your hair was like this instead. So you had to really be focused on that, and she was really on it. And also lots of like sun cream as well, because she was talking about how she worked previously with other people who had got tans midway through filming, and how and how much how much of a problem that caused with the filmmakers. So we were always putting sun cream on. We used umbrellas in the sun to stop getting a tan. It was incredibly funny. Yeah.
That is absolutely brilliant. And let's just talk about, because that sort of stop-start nature where you might, again, people not familiar with acting on screen, where they're used to a theatre, you start at the beginning, you work your way through, and I suppose as an actor, you can kind of build your performance. You can judge at any point where you are on that development, whereas you might be asked to go to the most intense thing as the first thing you do, and then work to the beginning, and you're kind of trying to plot your own path in this very disjointed fashion. Maybe let's just talk to us a little bit about what's that journey like.
I think the main thing is remembering what's happened last in the film's chronological order, because there was one bit where I don't know, I had to come in from just being like bullied and start a scene, and I kind of had to remember, even though we'd filmed that, we actually hadn't filmed that yet. So I had to kind of imagine what I would be feeling. It is hard to remember the sort of whole character development thing. It's just like another aspect to be thinking about when you're acting.
Yeah, I concur. I think that the fact that we didn't film it in a chronological order from like story perspective was quite disorientating at times, because as you said, you have to think about what's happened to the character previously. But if you haven't experienced that yet, you kind of have to imagine it. There's lots of imagination that comes into play when you do this sort of thing, and I had to put a lot of focus on that, especially with like the later scenes, because obviously I wanted to focus on my character's journey, but if I hadn't done the start yet, where do I go from? And so I took a lot of time to think about what they would be like, their mannerisms at the beginning and the end, and how to transport that from start to finish.
It's a lot of prep time, and there's a lot of waiting around.
Yeah.
As we say, that must be a big factor of it, right? I mean, that is a thing, and one has to, I suppose, just get used to that. How did you feel that just the waiting around, I suppose, and then turning it on? You suddenly need to go off a sixpence.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing as I said before, of like staying in your head, and like you can talk to people around you, but there are also some parts, because to camera people, this sounds bad, but you're sort of like a doll to them. Like you just kind of have to stay exactly where you are, because they need to sort of focus their things, and like, so there were some parts where I was just sort of standing still for 10 minutes and no one was talking to me, but it's kind of partially quite useful for the acting, because you can kind of really think about, you don't just go straight into it, you really think about what you're feeling, but then it's also partially difficult, because then once you've got that, you have to like keep it in your head and not lose it.
Something that I would say is what I did to help me stay in characters. I actually made a playlist. I thought, what sort of music would my character be listening to? And so in between takes, I just have an AirPod in my ear, listening to the music and thinking, okay, this is how the character...
What do you have on this playlist? Go on, give us some...
It was a mix of... I'm not someone that listens to a lot of rap, but there was a lot of rap on there, a mix of drill as well, all stuff that I wouldn't really listen to, and some sort of heavy metal as well. So it's just sort of things which I thought encapsulated Alex's character I would have playing in my ear. Also, something that became like a running joke is like everyone knew that I was doing this, so I would be quite rude sometimes, but it was like everyone knew that I was doing it to sort of like keep the character's mannerisms again. So we would go for lunch, and I would just start speaking to people and be like, "Oh, you're being Alex. You're being an Alex."
So your character acting,
yes,
out of
off screen, I was still speaking as the character to try and keep his mannerisms and keep it alive.
Brilliant. And so finally, you get through and you wrap the project. Do you remember what was that feeling like at the wrap?
Well, I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but we were not ready at all for the wrap, because we'd done a scene and we were talking to each other about how it wasn't very good. We were talking to each other about like, we should do it a bit better next time. And then, because it was a super wide, we couldn't see any of the directors. But then from like the other side of the garden, they shouted, "That's a wrap." And we went, "Oh, okay." But, I mean, it was really exciting, the whole wrap thing. But yeah, it was sort of, we weren't ready for it at all.
Then you had a Paradisco, I understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
As it got called.
It was awesome.
We went into the main area of the villa, and we grabbed the speaker. We put on some party lights, because obviously we had lots of lighting equipment from making the movie. So the lighting, I had to say, was very good. Whoever was doing the lighting, Very well done. And it was lots of good fun. And we had some signature dances from the summer camp that we do. And they're you know what I mean, Calypso. We have specific dances that the staff had choreographed. Or done. It was a lot of good fun.
Also at the Paradisco, where we were, there were these like glass floors, and on like the first day, everyone was stepping on them with their heavy camera equipment, and on the second day, they'd all had these massive cracks, so we were just like avoiding them the whole time. It was really scary.
Well, they were sort of like, because I saw one that had a crack, and then there was a very big drop, wasn't there?
Terrifying.
It was like a booby trap. And so eventually the dream ended to some degree, and you came back to Earth. You went back to your lives. Just give us a sense, because actually we haven't mentioned it. How old are you, Ashton?
I'm 18, so unfortunately I can't go back next year, which is a really big bump.
To the Young Film Academy summer camp.
Yeah, to the summer camp.
How old are you, Calypso?
I'm 17.
17. And so you went back, and were you at school, university? So you landed back in your life?
Yes, so I currently go to a music theatre college, and so I went back to that. And I'll be honest, I had I call it the post-Paradiso blues. I had a similar thing when I left the summer camp. Everything just felt a bit dull for a little while, because it's just, you're living in this, I mean, I dare to say, a magical world, and you just get so used to that. And it's very unique, and it's very special to have people who share the exact same passion for you. Everyone that was there wants to go into the same industry. We all love the same things. So it's like to separate yourself from that, and you've got used to that for a good week, and just like to leave that, it's just quite sad sometimes.
A lot of people have talked about that sort of the like minds, that feeling of being in a community where you've got, I think one of the filmmakers in an earlier episode said, even if you've got nothing to talk about with someone else, you just go, what movies do you like, and you're already into a whole bonding thing. What was it like for you, Calypso, coming back to Earth as well?
Yeah, I agree. It was sad. I remember landing in the airport and just like yapping to my parents for half an hour and telling them every single thing that had happened. But then I was just really sad. Well, I was happy initially when I got home, because it was quite a draining experience. As fun as it was pretty exhausting. But then I was just really sad. I missed everyone a lot. Everyone who does the summer camp and Paradiso, they're all so cool and like fun. And like you said, it's so nice to have people who have similar interests. And it's just a bit sad to not see them anymore, because we all come from everywhere. So
yeah.
Something that I would add on to that is that we had a lot of inside jokes. And it was weird, because I'd start using them at my college and no one would understand what I was talking about, because I just got so used to that environment. I got used to saying the same things that it was like, oh, I'm not there anymore. Like, these people don't understand the jokes that we've been making. So yeah, it's a life-changing experience, in my opinion.
Well, especially actors or on sets, as far as because actors spend a lot of time together on sets, they do form and they get a lot of in-jokes and they have a lot of fun, behind the scenes as well. And actually, there is a behind the scenes of the Project Paradiso for this year, which is going to be really nice as well. Because I think in the end, you went in the pool. You were thrown in the pool in one sequence.
He got thrown in the pool.
How many times did you get thrown in? And was it cold?
It was freezing. But I had I was thrown in once for the thing, and then I had to go inside, like dry myself off with a hairdryer, put on a dry set of the same clothes, come back out, do the shot again. And then they told me it was the last time, so I went to get changed. And then Angie came to me and went, Calypso, I have some really bad news. But I don't know, it was, once I got used
you had to do it again?
Yeah. No, I just had to lower myself back into the pool because they needed a shot of me climbing out. So I had to put my wet clothes back on, which was actually worse than getting in the pool. But I don't know, it was all exciting. It's just, I enjoy all the extreme parts because it made me really feel like I was doing it. And I was like, doing something really exciting and cool and real. So. And
you were using some very top-end equipment, and the shots, the movie looks absolutely stunning, by the way, and your performances all come across beautifully. Did you see any of the footage kind of live on set? Did you see any of it at all?
No.
Well, I saw quite a bit when I wasn't on screen. So when Calypso had a lot of her like one-on-one screen time, I would sit there with the directors and everyone else and watch and try and learn from both what they were doing and also from what Calypso was doing. I was trying to take notes from what she was doing, saying, how can I incorporate what she's doing into my performance? And also, yeah, as you said, seeing them set up all that equipment, they brought out cranes and dollies, and watching all that setup, I was like, wow, the sheer amount of focus that needs to go in, because it's all, the cranes especially can be quite dangerous as well if you're not careful. So everyone needs to be so self-aware and focused all the time. It was really interesting to
And
see.
seeing on those big monitors the performance there is
Yes.
quite lovely, isn't it? When you see, and when you use really top end gear, really nicely lit, that sense I'm always struck by. It sort of just looks suddenly like a really high end movie, and it's your faces on that screen. Yeah. Okay, well, coming back and sort of looking at the whole thing, then I suppose as an experience, both as a personal experience and also from an acting perspective. I suppose we have, hopefully this is only the beginning actually of what Project Paradiso will do, and the premiere in London is coming up and in a couple of months' time, and then after that, who knows, maybe the film will do nothing, maybe it will have a life, we don't know. I suppose let's start with you, Calypso. Looking back on it, what do you think are the impacts of the project, both on you as an actor and as a person?
I think as a person, just the friendships and all of the sort of amazing experiences. It was genuinely one of the best weeks of my life, and it's like, it feels like I'm very grateful to have got to do it, and I'm definitely going to remember it. And from an acting perspective, it just made me realize how, a lot about what it's like actually is to do, but also how much I wanted to do it because I had so much fun doing it. And I don't know, it just made me excited for the future.
It's wonderful.
I'll do a similar structure to Calypso. Socially, as a person, I think I grew so much. I found myself a lot more because, as you say, it's such a life-changing experience, and it's not something that most people get to experience. So I really took the most of that, and I found out who I was a bit more doing this project. And I'd say from an acting perspective, I learned so much more about doing the screen stuff, because obviously when you're doing the summer camps, it's very full on, but you're not using that 1% technology that you get to use when you're doing Paradiso, and also it's a lot more focused because when you're doing the summer camp, they're making how many? I couldn't say how many
36
movies.
films. Yeah.
36 films in 2 weeks, and you're making one film in 1 week, and it's very focused, and especially when you're on screen, there's lots of focus on you. So I feel like you develop so much as both an actor and a person doing it.
Great. And we always end these podcasts by asking our guests to go back to travel back in time to their teenage selves and give them a piece of advice. Now, you don't need to travel back in time because you are your teenage selves. So maybe let's frame the question as, I suppose there might be listeners to this who are aspiring young actors, actresses, and they want to maybe follow you in some journey a bit like this. What advice could you give them that you think would be helpful to them in their journeys?
For me, I'd say the number one thing is being proactive. If you don't do, you won't learn. And so for me, the biggest thing was just getting out and doing as much as you can. Well, I mean, even if it's not doing, like, if you can't get on the course straight away or do something straight away, just make little things with your phone, with your friends. Just try and rack up as much experience as you can, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you into that performer.
Great.
Yeah, mine's similar. Just every teacher and instructor has told us, if you want to do something, just do it. Like if you had a film idea, you don't need to have the camera, but just write the script up and see if you can do anything with it. And I guess don't sort of wait for it to be perfect and for you to have all the stuff. Just start doing it and then go from there, because that's a lot easier.
I think that's really good advice. I mean, we've always said that philosophy of Young Film Academy is very much to get out there and do it in some way, and don't wait for opportunities. I've seen a lot of young people who there's a tendency to sort of go, well, I've never been offered this. I can't do it because no one's given me that. Well, and the sad truth is that life often won't give you it. So you do have to go out and make it happen. And by making it happen, and almost all our guests at high ends of their careers, they're looking back and they think, well, I just went to that, I would call it pebbles in the stream. They went to that pebble, and then that pebble gave them an opportunity to jump to the next pebble. And from that pebble, they went to and it wasn't like they had this overarching kind of career path in their mind. They look back and they were like, oh, I just went from that to that. And in retrospect, it seems to have some sort of shape, I suppose. So yeah, it's great to hear from you guys sort of jump in, do it, and I suppose overcome the fear factor. I suppose that must be a part of it, right?
Yes, I think it plays a really big, as we spoke previously in the podcast about that judgmental side. I mean, you've kind of, I think the best way to describe it is you kind of build yourself up and you're thinking everyone's thinking about this, and they're really not focused on that, and that's just this big mental barrier that you need to get past. And once you do, it's just so freeing. and I'm sure you would agree, Calypso.
Yeah, I with the self-conscious thing as well, I just had a thought about that. Like, you know, when you see someone, you think, wow, they're so good at acting. And it's never because they're like, they hold back. It's always because they fully go for it, which I feel like is something you can do in everything. The best people, the people who do the best and are most successful are the people who put everything at it, I think.
Yeah, great. Well, great advice, and I'm sure there'll be young listeners out there who want to follow in both of your footsteps. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to discuss that project. So that is Project Paradiso 2024, which will be dropping soon. Strings will be hopefully out there on the networks at some point and will be beginning its life. So we will see. So best of luck for the premiere. I hope it goes well, and best of luck returning to your studies. So thanks a lot for joining us, everybody. It's been a real pleasure. I think we can all get out there now, guys, and have a look at some shiny tech.
Yes, definitely.
Let's go and look at some fun toys. So thanks a lot for joining. See you next time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.